Good evening and welcome to cdee89787d1942ef90f29849fa78c7b5 True Crime Podcast, and I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Stu Armstrong. Good evening, Stu.
Hi, Steve. How are you doing?
I'm great, mate. Good to see you and good to finally get you on. I've been going through my little black book and you were on the top of one of my lists, and then I thought, you know what, I'm going to keep him for a rainy day, and the rainy day has arrived because we've got a similar person who always likes to have a pop at us on social media, and I thought, it'd be a good time to get Stu on. We can hear what Stu's got to say. But first, let's talk about you, Stu, because I want to introduce you to the audience. I want people to know a little bit about you, who you are, etc. So where were you born, Stu?
I don't want to admit this. I was born in Ashington, of all places.
That's not bad, eh?
I was only there for about 10 minutes. I'm from North Shields, really, but I happen to be born in Ashington.
Yeah, that's not a bad thing, mate. That's not bad. So, did you have a good childhood? Where you brought up in North Shields? Did you say?
Yeah, well, I was brought up in North Shields till I was about 8, and then moved off into the countryside up along Horsley, past Morpeth. And my parents bought the pub there, the Shoulder of Mutton, and I lived there for about 2 or 3 years, and then back to North Shields. Lived in Monksheaton for a while, and then back to North Shields. It's like a magnet, I think. What was it like growing up in a pub? Well, I grew up in a few different pubs, not just that one, and it was weird that you go to bed as a kid at the night time and you can hear all the people downstairs and stuff like that, and it takes a bit of getting used to, but after a while it just feels normal. And then all I wanted to do growing up was to do the same thing and run a pub, and I went into the pub trade for about 4 or 5 years. And then I realised that the amount of hours you put in and the money you would, if you put it to an hourly rate, it would be peanuts, really. I mean, you'd be working from like 6 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock the next morning, and people only see the bit where the bar's open and you've got people in. They don't see you doing the lines, getting the deliveries, doing the books, the whole thing. So I'm pleased I did it, though.
So which pubs did you run?
Well, my first one was over your neck of the woods. It was the Maiden over in at Heworth Roundabout. That was the first one. The Musketeer in Forest Hall. That was my favourite. The Bluebell at Chermoor, which was nice. I should have known when I took that one. Bars on my bedroom window and a metal bedroom door. Thought nothing of it until the night I heard this banging. And I thought, someone's trying to get in. So I picked up the phone. The phone lines were dead. The alarms were off. And somebody put the back door in with a big sleeper and was robbing the place.
Wow.
So that was good fun. The Maiden Over as well. I got robbed at the Maiden Over as well.
Never. What? Like a burglary or an armed robbery or what?
No. Well, it was like a burglary. I was asleep upstairs and the alarms went off. And I came running down with a baseball bat, runs into the bar, and you couldn't make it up. They looked like they were about 13 or 14. There was loads of them. And as soon as the door opened, I put the light on, they all just disappeared. But they're just nicking the spirits and stuff like that.
It's hard living then, doing that.
Yeah, it's very hard. It's very hard working, very long hours, and especially when you live in the bar as well, you cannot really get away from it. So it was definitely an experience.
Any trouble in that environment? Obviously, you're a big lad, you can handle yourself. But I mean, were you any situations that stand out from your time as a pub landlord?
Nothing too bad, really. Just the odd sort of fight. I mean, they were mainly like sort of friendly locals, where it would be one of the locals would kick off every now and again. You'd sling them out. They'd come in the next day and say sorry, or if it was really bad, you bar them. Nothing really bad. Sort of like running pubs and stuff like that.
I mean, obviously, with pubs being difficult to make money in pubs, was it one of those where you're tempted to have a lock in? I mean, that seems to be the norm. A lot of these places where after hours the curtains get drawn and you're having a pint afterwards, and that goes on till 1 or 2 in the morning. Was that the case with any of these pubs that you had or not?
As if I'd do such a thing like that. At least 3 nights every weekend, sometimes during the week. And I'm that old that I still remember having lock-ins on a Sunday afternoon before the licensing hours changed, and you had to close from 3 till 7. You should just pull the curtains and carry on.
Yeah.
But even then, it was different. So like if you're going to have a lock-in, the pint glass used to go around, and everybody would have to put £1 in the glass, and that would pay the bar staff to stay on. But we used to make more money in lock-ins.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I remember doing a few lock-ins myself, over the years. I mean, there was one place, used to be called the Ship in Heworth. I remember we had an overnight one there. I think we all woke up in the bar at about 7:30 in the morning.
When I had the main Nova, because it was just down, it's sort of along the main drag and then down the hill, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. The Ship's not there anymore. That's a shop. That's on the top of the High Heworth Lanes, and I'm not even sure if the Maiden Nova is still there. The Swan is still there in Heworth, of course, but happy memories. So you got out of the pub game. What did you do after that?
I did all kinds of bits and bobs, to be honest, and that's when I started working on the door, and I started working in IT at the same time.
So you start working on the door. What takes you into that environment? Because to be a pub manager is one thing, and dealing with people, and you by your own admittance, you work in some fairly friendly places, and didn't have too much confrontation. What prompted you to want to go and do the door?
I've got no clue. I think growing up in pubs, I think it was kind of in my blood. And when I came out of the pub trade and I was doing like normal 9 to 5 jobs, I kind of missed it a bit. And I just sort of fell into it. Somebody asked us if they'd give them a hand on the door over the Fish Creek Festival. And I did that, and I just kind of carried on and did it all. 20 odd years altogether, on and off. You'll have stints coming off for a couple of years and back on, and then the last 7 or 8 years in Whitley Bay. I mean, I only stopped 3 years ago.
So you went into IT as well. What were you doing in IT?
I started off as in your favourite city of Sunderland. I was working as an IT project manager for, at the time, they were called London Electricity. It's now EDF with Doxford Park in Sunderland. And then from there, I was there about 4 years. Then I went over to Sage, and I used to do network tech support for the accountancy packages and whatnot. So I'm working in IT to this day. So I implement sort of web-based HR and recruitment systems and build them. I just got promoted about 3 weeks ago, so I manage the other consultants now as well. So it's been good, but I think the sort of the opposite side of it is the more exciting part of it. That's where I used to like to work the doors, and it kind of offset it. And then,
so why do that? Because some people won't understand. It sounds like IT is a fairly decent job. Imagine as a decent salary, and you can do okay depending on how high up the ladder you get. But why have the door job as well? I mean, you finished. I presume you were doing 9 to 5 your daytime, and then God, you have a busy day at work, stressful day at work. You get in, have your tea, and you've got to go out and deal with somebody who's half cut on the door.
Just a strange bloke, I think. I mean, the sort of biggest side of it was I had a sort of 10-year spell of working as an HR manager for like a national social housing company. And I enjoyed the job, enjoyed the place, but there's no excitement in it. And you get a bit frustrated with people, and you kind of get them told, sort of thing. And that was like it's just the complete polar opposite. And I don't know, I think it's doing both. I think it made us happy doing both of them because they were so different. Kind of kept life interesting, so to speak.
Did you have to do a door course or take a license when you started the door?
When I first started, there was no licenses, no badges or anything like that. And then I did it with North Tyneside Council to get the council badges. And I got like North Tyneside, Gateshead, Newcastle badges. That was just an absolute joke, though. I'll never forget it. We were in there, and the police were in running the course, and they brought this bag of drugs round to show you what drugs look like, and they were handing them round. And I'll never forget it. At the end, the bag of E's were missing. You collect one bag in, and there was about 5 or 6 E's in the bag, and they were just gone.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember doing this. I did the same. I mean, I worked in Newcastle in the northeast, and then I remember working in London. Yeah, you get your badge. Wow, classic. Yeah, I mean, and That's what people won't know, because people just see a doorman and think, oh well, he's a big lad. He obviously beats people up for fun, and that's why he's doing the door. But it got to that stage where licensing came in because the police felt that gangsters were running the doors and they wanted to license it. But of course, the council thought it was a great idea as well, because they could make some money out of the doorman in the city centre. So it went hand in hand, and it was nationwide. And of course, that really started in the northeast after there'd been a spate of shootings in the northeast and unsolved murders up and down the country, and it just led to the councils making a decision. Look, this is what we're going to do. We need to drive the gangsters out of the cities, and this is how we're going to do it. So Newcastle was a pioneer. Middlesbrough, I think, was the first. Then Newcastle. Then it went down to Westminster. And I knew I was working on the doors in Westminster, and we didn't just have to have a license for Westminster. We also had to have a license for each individual area that we worked in. It was ridiculous. And that happened in the northeast. If you had a license for Newcastle, you couldn't work in South Shields. You had to have a license for South Shields, and it was different councils. You were paying different money. Absolutely crazy. But yeah.
Well, I know from the North Tyneside Council one, South Tyneside Council one, Sunderland one, and Newcastle one. And you had to pay for each of them.
That's right. Unbelievable. But the way they saw it was we were making decent money. I mean, what were you on an hour for your first job, and where was your first job?
First job on the door.
Yeah,
it was about £10 an hour, I think, and it was down at the Fish Key Festival in O'Shields, bar called the Waterfront, which is now a block of flats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, you were talking. So what year were you talking for the Fish Key Festival? Can you remember? Mid-90s, yeah. Okay. So I was rather fortunate. I started at Masters and I was on £15 an hour, and I was, it was a decent, it was the best bar in the town in Newcastle city centre. It was a place where everyone started and where everyone finished. And again, it was like it was those old licensing hours. So, 10:30 finish on a Sunday, and that was it. Nowhere to go after that. And nightclubs, although they existed, didn't go on till 4, 5 or 6 in the morning. You know what I mean? Nightclubs in those old days were closed down at 2 o'clock maximum. At the very latest. But yeah, I mean, can you remember your first night on the door? What was it like, Stu? Were you nervous?
It was a day, right? Because I started, I think, about 10 o'clock in the morning, and it was till about midnight, and not particularly nervous. I was sort of very aware, but I think we're growing up in pubs, and my dad had been a doorman back in the day as well. So I don't know. I wouldn't say nervous, but I was kind of aware that it wasn't something I'd done before. But it was quite bizarre, actually. The first shift, we had this fella trying to get in, absolutely mortal drunk. And he was going to do this and do that and cut your throat and, like they do, and come back and stuff. And about 2 hours later, here he comes. And he had something in his hands. Didn't know what it was. So I get hold of him, took it off him. It was a bottle of whiskey. The hell, what are you going to do with that? Like, he went, I was coming to say sorry. I've been an absolute dickhead and I brought you a drink.
Unbelievable. I mean, that's it. I was going to ask you what was your first bit of bother then? I mean, that was mild compared, I'd imagine. What was it?
That was nothing really.
At that place, no.
I'm trying to think of the first. I've got a dint in my head off one. It wasn't the first, but
yeah, tell us about that then.
Well, that was the fire station in Whitley Bay, and I was on the door there about 7 years, and dead quiet night. And I happened to walk down the bar and right down at the back. And I still don't know what they were doing. There was 3 of them. And they were arsing about the fire exit and trying to push the bin into the road. So I yorked 2 of them out. And there was another one standing there next to the fire exit. And I just looked at him and I thought, it's not going to go well for me, this. And I got hold of him. And I just couldn't do nothing with him. And the other doorman came flying through. And he gave him his absolute best shot. And he couldn't do anything with him. And he kept hitting us on the head with a bottle of Desperado. And I was just wishing for it to break. And it never did. And I don't know, I've got a big dent in my head. And it perfectly fit a bottle of Desperado there. But the funny bit about that, I've been standing talking to somebody in the front bar. On, gear on, tie on, whatnot. Went for a walk, came back like 2 minutes later. Literally, my shirt was ripped off. I was covered in blood, the whole lot. And this bloke's going, bloody hell, what's happened to you, sort of thing. But I think I've been quite lucky over the years. I've pretty much done all right. But I think, again, like the playoff between the two things, the years I was in Whitley Bay, I was on at the fire station till like 1 o'clock, half one. So that used to shut at 1. You get away by half 1. Then I used to go straight down the street and work in Deep, the nightclub. And totally different kettle of fish in there. So you get somebody really kind of working the ticket, and you have to be sort of at least half polite as you drag them out by the head at the fire station. And then if they hung about and kept coming back, shit, we'll just get you later in Deep. And I can say that now because it's closed down.
And did you?
Oh, yeah, quite often. They had faulty cameras.
I mean, obviously, doing the door, I always found it, it paid to be balanced and fair. It's difficult when you're dealing with people who are drunk and people who are off their nut on drugs, but at the same time, showing a little bit of respect to people isn't a bad thing. I mean, were you the same? Did you work it in the same kind of way?
Well, I used to kind of look at it that if I couldn't sort out at least 90% of the stuff by talking to somebody, that I wasn't doing the job properly. And I would always be very polite and respectful to somebody, sort of first time. And then we used to get like loads of stag nights from Glasgow and stuff from Whitley Bay. And I'm not the tallest of people. And you'd have this big gang of them. And there'd always be one about 6'5". So I would always just go straight in the middle of the crowd and go straight up to the biggest one. And they'd either behave or they think, Christ, he's only about 3'2" or something, and it would make them laugh. And then you could calm them down and get them out. But it was always my thing, and I had a few lads working for us over the years where if something even minor would happen, the first thing they do is just grab them and drag them out, and it's no way to do it.
Did people take your size as a weakness? Did people think you were going to be easy game then?
I don't think so. I mean, there was always all kinds of stuff going on in Whitley, especially with like the Glasgow fortnight where they come down on the holidays, and it got to the stage over the years where you'd spend 2 weeks like rolling the floor with Glaswegians, and then they'll go home, and then the following year they'll come down and go, "Oh, hello, mate, you all right?" And you'd end up doing the same thing again.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing. I mean, Whitley Bay was known back in the 90s and very early 90s, before they changed the licensing and you had to drink indoors, for bank holiday Mondays. And I mean, it's we're recording this on a Sunday. It's bank holiday Monday tomorrow. And, back in the day, I would have been heading down to Whitley Bay early, probably on a mini bus with my mates from Gateshead, going into the bars at the top of the strip, and then working my way down, drinking bloody £4 pints of pink kangaroos, probably getting a Sylvester's at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, going to the Hairy Lemon and watching people make an idiot of themselves on the slippy thing outside where people were hitting them.
Right.
Honestly, I mean, happy memories. And I mean, it
used to be great. I mean, it used to be that busy. They closed the whole road off and stuff, and
it was bouncing, wasn't it?
I've just seen one of my friends, somebody you know, probably Gary Coombs.
Oh, yes, yeah.
I've just seen him commenting on Facebook. Oh, I've got these memories. I'm just sitting thinking of bank holidays, working at Whitley Bay. I used to just work there on bank holidays down in Savannah. And they were really good days, but the last couple of years I was there, it just died of death. It really, really died of death.
Why?
I think a lot of it was orchestrated by the council, where they'd try and change licensing hours. They would do the best to try and get places out of business. And they were filling the bed and breakfasts with all kinds of smackheads. And it's a very different place to what it used to be. And on the door there, you could markedly see the difference from when I started in Whitley Bay to when I finished. And by the time, like the last couple of years, it was people coming at you with needles and knives and hammers and all kinds of things. But there were the people that came from all the different areas that were living in the bed and breakfasts, all kinds of druggies, and it really changed a lot.
Yeah, it was sad to see the demise of Whitley Bay, because that Spanish City is something that's recognised in Mark Knopfler's Dire Straits song. You know what I mean? And the Long Sands paid tribute to it with their album, and it's a place which is synonymous with the coastal part of our beautiful area up in the northeast. But it was just part of bank holidays, and I've met many a Londoner or Scouser or Manc who I know who's gone, God, I used to love coming to Whitley Bay on bank holidays, and it's bizarre how many people used to make the pilgrimage. You know,
they come from all over the country.
Yeah,
with some cracking days down there. Probably looking back on it with rose-tinted glasses, but I used to start about 11 o'clock on the morning because I worked at the top end, so it'd be busy. And it always seemed to be, the sun seemed to be shining, and we had some good days there, definitely. Some mad ones, but some good ones.
When I was a kid and I used to go drinking in South Shields, I used to get stopped for me skinhead. I've had a skinhead since I was a kid. I'm not a newfound skinhead, and people call us bald, but I've always been a skinhead since I was at school. I'm
just bald.
I used to get stopped at boulevards and Oz for my haircut, but I also used to get knocked back for white socks. What was the thing that you used to knock people back for, Stu?
Well, it was all when I worked at Deep, and it wasn't so much me. It's and anybody that knows Whitley Bay, they'll have heard of Norman Thorpe. He'd been there for about 200 years. I still say he's probably the hardest bloke I've met in my life. Lovely fella. And he had this thing about Nike Air Max trainers. If you had Nike Air on, it was fine. If they were Air Max, nah, wouldn't let you in. Used to make me laugh, but sometimes on quiet nights, we used to sort of, me and a lad called Dano we used to work with, we used to pick a colour, to be arseholes really, and say it was red, and somebody came in and had a red shirt on. Not getting in the night, mate. Why? Or red top on. No red tops tonight. And wait until they walked out and then go, oh, I'm only joking. But yeah, it was always the Air Max in Whitley Bay.
What was the funniest thing that happened to you on the door?
Probably, so there was a bank holiday, funny enough. I went in a little bit before I was going to start in the fire station, and there was a funny atmosphere. But I was working in another bar down the street for a couple of hours first, and I don't know why, I'd never done it before. I picked up one of the radios from the fire station. I'd said to Phil, the manager, if he needed, just radio. So he radioed. So I goes running up, and as I'm walking through the beer garden towards the door, I got on the radio and said I was here. And then I just seen this thing running for us, and it was a bloke about 6'2", dressed in a basque, stockings and suspenders and high heels. And before I knew what was happening, he just jumped on top of us. So we're rolling the floor, pretty wrestling and all kinds. And there was a load of them on a stag night. But then 10 minutes later, when I went back to the bar I was working at, I seen him sitting in the back of a police van, handcuffed with these basques on and stuff. Absolutely nuts. But that was Whitley Bay, all the stupid stuff like that.
Worst violence that you saw on the door?
I've seen some quite naughty things in Deep, but more so once we get them out. That's probably one thing that does stick in my head, and this wasn't in Whitley Bay. This was the poacher at Swarwell at the bottom of the bank. Yeah, and it was in there. I went in, and I don't know what the occasion was, whether it was Christmas time or whatever, but it was absolutely heaving. And I was in there by myself, and I saw this bit of an argument starting, and it was just like verbal. And the thing that really got me, I'm going over there and getting through, and I could see the whole thing. And this kid's first reaction was to pick up a glass, and he stuck it in the other one's face. And I ended up sitting on the floor waiting for the ambulance, kind of holding his face together with his cheek. And it turned out both of them, they were only 15 years old. Oh. And that made me kind of worry for the future. I mean, it was the same year that Ben, my oldest, had just been born. And I remember sitting thinking, if that's a natural reaction of a 15-year-old, and it wasn't, you could say it was just his reaction without thinking. And if that's the reaction of them, it's a funny old world, but it was awful, that. Yeah, absolutely awful. I mean, that kid over a stupid argument in a pub that they shouldn't have even been in. And this is me just walking in the door starting. I think it's going to be a good night. I ended up literally sitting cradling him on the floor, literally pushing his cheek back into his face because the whole thing was hanging off. And he must be in a mess to this day. I mean, that was, 19 years ago. Ben's 19 now, so 19 years ago. And there's no way that wouldn't scar him for the rest of his life. It's pretty horrific, that.
Yeah, it does sound it. I've seen a few. I might do a podcast myself on some of my stories at some point, because I've got some great stories to tell. And I've never written a book about doing the door. I've included some of my door stories in some of the books I've done, but Stu has done a few books, and a few books that you can find on Amazon. And yeah, I remember meeting Stu years ago. We sat down, we had a coffee in Blake's, and he asked us for some advice. I gave him some. He went away and he took it. And honestly, some of his books are fantastic. But The Diaries of a Doorman is one of them. Tell us a little bit about that, Stu. Why did you want to write a book?
So from as long as I remember being a kid, I've always loved to write, and I've always wanted to write a book. And I remember even as, I don't even know how old I was, I used to make them when we felt tips, little Stu's News, I used to call it, and things like that. And I'd always wanted to write a book, but I kind of didn't know how to go about it, and I didn't really have the confidence to do it. And to be honest, it was you that kind of give us the kick up the arse and that bit of inspiration. And you'll still see to this day in the front of all my books, I acknowledge you and everyone. And it was really around that meeting. And I remember you saying it was, who was it? Riddick Bowe. When Riddick Bowe, you brought him to Newcastle. I remember you saying, well, I've been reading some of the stuff you've been writing on Facebook. You should think about writing a book. And that's kind of egged us on a bit. And then when we were going to do one together, it just kind of pushed us over the line. And I didn't really know sort of what I wanted to write. And I thought, I've read a lot of Doorman books, and a lot of them are, oh, look at me, I'm really hard, I chin everybody, I'm king of the world. And I wanted to write something different, because there's so much humour on the door and so much humorous situations, but there's some sad, tragic ones as well. I want to try and capture that. So I did sort of each chapter is a different kind of short story. And I literally thought my mum would buy one and that would be it. And it went nuts. I used to have people bringing them down to the door when I was on the door with me, oh, will you sign this book for us? It just went absolutely mad. So I ended up writing 4 volumes of Diaries of a Doorman.
Brilliant stuff. I mean, it's a great read, and it's nice to see already. As Zammy Adams said, she Zammy Adams is going to buy that book, which is great. And Funko says, got to get a book read called Watch My Back. I've met Jeff, mate. I think I've told you this before. The story is naughty, but so is the bouncer. Great story about a down and out who took a chance. Yeah, Jeff Thompson, great guy. Met him a couple of times, and he's got a tragic story, but a story of fighting back. But some great stories about doing the door in Coventry. Well worth a read, that Funko. But yes, Stuart,
the first door book I ever read.
Yeah, I think it was probably the first door book that came out, wasn't it? It was
quite personal, and it wasn't just about, you got the whole thing of the ups and downs of it. And I mean, there was a part where they'd be training in the shed before work and things like that.
Yeah.
Good read.
Yeah, great read. Well worth getting a copy if anybody wants to get something and have a read in the next few weeks. But make sure you buy Stu's Diaries of a Doorman. Tell us about that then. What was the response to that book?
I think there was shock more than anything else. Because I didn't sort of tell a great deal of people, although I was advertising it, and as people found out, well, like, really? And people were really surprised. The thing that always sticks in my mind, the manager of the fire station in Whitley when I worked there, his wife bought him that book for Christmas. And I remember ringing us going, I've just opened my Christmas presents. And what do I see? Your ugly mug staring back at us. But it got a brilliant response, and I was really, really shocked. And I didn't do it to try and sell loads of copies or to make money or whatever. I did it because I wanted to write a book. And I was amazed. It went really, really well, and I've kind of got the bug, and I just keep writing.
What's your favourite story in that, Stu? Can you pick one?
There's probably one, it's in the first book, called The Breadstick, funny enough. And that was in Whitley Bay. There was this kid that used to come down, and I'd never met him before, but he was bad news, and he was renowned for being bad news. And I remember him coming in, and he's giving it the big and saying, oh, I've got a shotgun up my jumper. But he only had a T-shirt on, that kind of idiot. But he was a big old lump. And I'd had words with him, and he was having none of it. So I ended up getting hold of him, started to try and drag him out. And before I knew it, I was flying through the air like Superman, straight over a table, through the glasses, He's on top of us, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm not doing well out of this. And the other doorman, funny enough, he just stood and watched. Lovely lad. And he stuck his teeth into me cheek and he started to bite. And I'm pleased he did, because that kind of made me lose my temper. And I managed to kick him off. I've still got one of his teeth somewhere. But about 2 weeks later, I was on my way home from work, like my IT job with my suit on and stuff. And I'm in Tesco's, and there's him and his mate. I could see them watching us on the sides of the aisles. And he comes so far down, and I knew he was behind us, like peripheral vision. And I turned around, I just banged him one with the first thing that came to hand. And I had a breadstick in my hand. And I've never seen anybody run so quick in all my life. And actually in the book, well, I took a photograph of that breadstick when I put it in the boot, all bent. And the photograph's even in the book as well.
Brilliant. Good story. Zami says, does Stu know Michael Goldie? He runs a security firm in Glasgow. Michael introduced me to Tommy Wisby. We used to drink in the Coach and Horses in Covent Garden with Tommy many years ago.
I know the name. It's like a familiar name, but he's not someone I know.
Okay. This was another book which you did not long after, Diaries of a Doorman, Bouncing in the Sun. Tell us a little bit about that one.
Well, I decided I've been on holiday off the Gran Canaria, and I decided I'm just going to quit my job and move out there, thinking it would be easy. And I went out there not really thinking about working on the door. I was thinking about having a nice chilled out time working behind a bar or something. Got offered a door job, and it was all about the stuff that happened there. I did some in Tenerife, some in Gran Canaria. Some funny old days then, some very funny old days. A lot of stairs, a lot of people, a lot of good people. There's a story in there about somebody who I became friends with, and he was from London, and he went over there. He was a recovering addict. He'd been in a really bad way with heroin, apparently. And when he was out there, he was absolutely brilliant. Stayed away from it, didn't drink. Really lovely lad. And then some of his friends came over to visit him, and they got him a load of it out there, and he ended up overdosing and he died out there. And it was quite a sad time, because it was me and him working together, and you know yourself when you work in the door with someone, you develop a relationship, you watch each other's back, you come like brothers. And that was quite a sad thing.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's another book you can pick up on Amazon. I've stuck the link down in the description if anybody wants to buy Stu's books. So hopefully you do get them on Kindle or buy the hard copies, but well worth having a look. He's got a full page of books. We'll talk a little bit about books as we progress through the interview. But tell us about your love for fighting, and I don't mean on the doors, I mean boxing, and how you got into BKB, because we want to talk a little bit about that tonight.
Well, I've always been an absolutely mad boxing fan. And I could have been world champion myself, if only I could box.
Could have been a contender.
I can't box eggs, mate, to be honest. But I've always loved it. And I used to watch some of the bare knuckle stuff you'd see on Facebook and James Quinn's knuckle film and stuff like that. And I happened to get invited to a bare knuckle show. And I went up there. And I went up with Paul Charters, who obviously was an ex-pro. And I remember saying to him in the car, let's go and see these idiots having a bit of a sort of snigger, which was very naive of me. The first fight, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I just fell in love with it. It's like pretty much nothing else. The sport, it's hard to explain. If you love boxing, then you'll absolutely adore bare knuckle. And I kind of fell into working in it, to be honest. I was doing some other bits and pieces of media stuff more as a hobby, and then I ended up doing it a lot with the bare knuckle. And I worked for a promotion for about 4 years as head of media for them. I'm not going to name them or go into too much detail, but I quit and I wouldn't work for them again. A lot of the practices were pretty dangerous, to say the least. And I walked away from bare knuckle altogether. But I had met sort of through the bare knuckle scene Sean Smith and his wife Amanda. So Sean, as you'll probably know from the viral Vice videos, the UK's scariest debt collector, the Liverpool fella. Absolutely lovely couple. And stayed friends with them throughout. And about 3 years ago, they said, "Oh, we're having a show down in Manchester. Would you like to come down as a guest?" So I went down, absolutely cracking. And then before I knew it, they offered us a job, which in all honesty, I didn't really want. I did it more because I think they kind of needed somebody and they were good friends. So I started doing media for them. And then totally out of the blue, I get a phone call this Sunday morning. And it's Amanda, Sean Smith's wife, asking if I wanted to come on board as a partner. So I've been a partner of UPKB, Ultimate Bare Knuckle Boxing. And absolutely loving it. Absolutely brilliant. And I had some bad experiences with other promoters who they don't see it through the same eyes as me, which is the most important thing. It's not about making money, it's about health and the safety of the fighters. And Sean and Amanda think in exactly the same way. And I think that's why it works really well.
So, I mean, is bare knuckle legal?
It is. So it's never actually been illegal, which many people think. It was the original form of boxing before the Marquis of Queensberry rules came in. And it kind of fell out of favour. It went underground a little bit. Obviously, the Travellers, they've got a fantastic history in it. It's it's levels above what you see in rings and stuff like that. The vast majority of it, but it's never actually been illegal. And it started coming back probably 10 years ago, but quite very small, where you'd have like 20, 30 people in a farm or something watching it in the hay bales. And then it sort of migrated its way in the boxing rings. And now we do 4 shows a year at the BAC Arena in Manchester, anywhere between 2,500 and 3,000 people there. It's all in the ring, proper referees, the whole thing. We've got a show on the 31st of July, and that's completely sold out already.
Wow.
Another one in December. But I think it's, a lot of people think, oh, bare knuckle. And I've got to admit, I did the first one I went to. And when it's done right, I mean, we've got exactly the same kind of sort of checks and medical care as in pro boxers. I mean, we've got ringside doctors. We haven't just got like a spotty kid from St. John's ambulance. Everybody's drug tested. The whole thing. We've got a referee, set rounds, 3-2s. He's some fighter. He's only had one looker. If you're watching, we need you back. He was absolutely phenomenal. Ex-Dorman as well.
You've obviously got a passion for it. You've obviously got a buzz for it. So, I mean, this show's sold out. What do you think the future is for bare knuckle? I mean, obviously, I'm in the pro game, but I came from the unlicensed game. As you know, you filmed a lot of my unlicensed shows. You filmed a lot of me after dinner events. You filmed a lot of my pro events as well. Where you're great. You've been great to me over the last few years, being able to do that. But the BKB is clearly something you've got a passion for. How far do you think it can go? Because boxing's been challenged by MMA. A lot of people predicted MMA would take over and boxing would die. It hasn't. They're both living alongside each other. Do you see a day when BKB can be the same level as MMA and doing the same?
Very much so. And I don't think it'll ever take over from boxing or MMA. They are very different. It's been a sort of long slog getting it up there. And it's just getting bigger and bigger. I mean, our company, UBKP, there was a 3-part Netflix documentary about it. It was before, I wasn't there at the time, so I missed my pretty face, called Bare Knuckle Fight Club. And that was trending for best part of a year on Netflix. It was absolutely phenomenal. Really, really good. But I think it's just a really sort of pure, raw form of combat sport, and not taking anything away from glove fighters. It is a different sport, but there's always the thing where, I think such and such is going to win, and you would always say, it just takes one shot to change that. Very much more in bare knuckle. It's a bit of an art form, to be honest. So if you'd imagine with gloves, you'd be fighting, you'd probably try a lot of head shots, chin shots, things like that. And bare knuckle, you can't do that because you'll break your hand. The skull's harder than the hand. They've got sort of thin bandage hand wraps on, and they've really got to sort of, pick the shots, get them in right, and if they're going to go for a headshot or try and get a chin and knock them out or something like that, they've really got to make it count. They've got to get it right. That you cannot just keep doing it or they'll end up with broken hands. And I've seen that with a lot of people who were really good glove fighters. When they've came into bare knuckle, they're trying to fight exactly the same way and they've ended up breaking their hands. And it's always a good thing when somebody comes over especially from the pros. I love watching the first bare knuckle fight because some of them take it like a duck to water. Some of them just don't want to know. I mean, we had one lad came over a couple of years ago, and he was like Conor McGregor the way he was going on before the fight. I'm going to chin his dad as well, and all of this. And he literally got hit with one bare fist, and he more or less cowered in the corner. He just didn't want to know. But in the same way, we had Lee Mould, ex-Northern Area champion.
Boxed on my pro shows and boxed on me unlicensed years ago.
Yeah. Well, he had his first bare knuckle for us just over 18 months ago or something. He's just absolutely phenomenal. He literally made it look so easy. And he fought our champion, who was the champion at the time, middleweight champion, minute into the first round. But he just made it, he just took it like a duck to water. And he took on board the whole thing about being careful of your hands and hitting the head and things like that. I tell you what it is, I wouldn't ever want a body shot of Lee Mould. Absolutely unreal. And it's all, I love watching that to see sort of which way they'll go. You can never really tell.
Is he still fighting, Lee Mould? Obviously, COVID's put a stop to everything, but I mean, it's on the go again. Is he still going to fight?
Yeah, he's going to have another one for us.
You'll have to let us know. I'd like to go and see Lee box,
Yeah, well, you're always welcome.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I enjoy going. It's a break for me. I mean, I can't endorse it or promote it, but I can certainly go and watch it. And I've enjoyed it. And I didn't think I would. I went to one in Newcastle in Wall's End probably about 2-3 years. Yeah. Yeah, that's it, Walker. That's right. Yeah, and it was it was great experience. Dave Courtney was doing the old MCing, and it was a cracking experience. Got a few questions coming in. Funko says bare knuckles illegal, but then again, what Mike Ashley allows Steve Bruce to do every week is too. But we still let that go on. Good, very good. Gary says Gary was asking if your books are available in the back page. Are they? Are they available?
No, they're not. They're only on Amazon.
Only on Amazon, okay. Yeah. Gary also asks, do you rate Michael Ferry and Jimmy McCrory? He says he loves to see Geordie's doing well, whatever they're doing.
Yeah, very much so, both of them. I mean, McCrory, he's done so much for the sport of bare knuckle in this country that he was a bit of a poster boy at one time for it. And, he's been one of the people that's really sort of brought it on. Michael Ferry, he's a good mate of mine. He's just unreal. The size of him and the power of him, but the speed, you don't get the speed on big heavyweights like that normally. In the same way, though, with Michael Ferry, I mean, there's no way I'd want to fight him. Sitting in my house one day, and my little lad started going, so you've just won world championships, so if I was to beat you, would I be the champion? I'm going, don't, so... didn't he? So he's kind of playing dead on the floor. Well, yeah, very much so. And there's a lot of good fighters from the northeast. So in previous years and up and coming now.
Firby's tried it. Gary Firby, of course, who I managed in the unlicensed game. He's had a go. Was he any good?
Absolutely phenomenal, as you would expect. He's but yeah, Gary's he's a one-off, is Gary.
Have a look on the playlist, guys. Gary Firby. Some of Gary Firby's fights are on the playlist. I've uploaded his, much to his delight, I've uploaded his very first professional fight, which goes up tomorrow against Mark Chester. It's a very slim Gary Firby, it has to be said, but a very confident Gary Firby. You can see where the Duke of Windy Nook began tomorrow night on the channel. Paul Green says, does Stu think bare knuckle will ever be on mainstream television?
I 100% do. The only thing really that's stopping it, I think, at the minute is politics. And there's a lot of bare knuckle promoters, there's a lot of bad blood between a lot of them, and it's very, very political. And I think that spoils it for a lot of the sort of mainstream media companies, where we just do our own thing. I don't care what another promoter's doing, what another promotion's doing. It's not, unless they want to have a show in the venue next door to mine on the same night, next hours, it doesn't interest me. And I think for the fact it did so well on Netflix when they had the 3-part series about UBKB, it just went, it's on its way.
Yeah.
And when you look at it now in America, Dave Feldman's promotion, that's just went absolutely crazy. And I think it was his second show, he outsold the UFC that was on the same night for pay-per-view. It's just absolutely crazy.
Through some of the events that I've done, and we've done security together, we've done book signings, we've done a lot of the meet and greet events. You've met a lot of stars. There's Big Daddy, Riddick Bowe, Ricky Hatton there, and of course one of Britain's favourites, Frank Bruno. You've met a lot of big celebs. Anyone that you were in awe of, or was there a one where you were too really excited to meet that person?
Yeah, 100%. And this was thanks to you, really. It was Tony Bellew. I've always been a fan of his, and what an absolutely lovely bloke. He was over at the Lancastrian Sweet and Gates at one of your shows, and you let us interview him. But even I took my son Ben, and I kind of said, just go to speak to him when he was on his way in, and he was so lovely. So lovely at the pen. But when we did this interview, and I probably shouldn't, because I'll come home stuck one of these days. Most people I interview, I offer to fight them. I did it to Shannon Briggs. I did it to him. And I remember him turning around and kind of looking at us. And then afterwards, he signed the glove saying, to Stu, please stop picking on us, Tony. But we had a great laugh, I think, doing that. And I was asking him about, who you're going to fight next. And it was after his first David Haye fight and before the second one. I'm no great fan of David Haye. I remember him saying, what's your true opinion? He's just a ball bag. So I just kind of fell about laughing. But I'm trying to big it up and say, this is who your next fight should be. And it was all about when he was in the Rocky film. You've got to go back and fight Adonis Creed. But I think he was expecting some big name to come up. I remember Wardy was in there as well, signing belts. And you can see it on the video, him just going, yeah, absolutely cracking bloke. Absolutely loved that. And the couple of times with Tyson Fury as well, again through you. And probably one of the nicest people ever, Shannon Briggs, who...
Let's go, champ!
I expected him to be an absolute knob.
We all did.
What you say. But isn't he a lovely, lovely fella, isn't he?
It's funny, I only said this either last night or the night before on another podcast, and it was a boxing podcast that I got invited to, and they were asking us who was the nicest person you've met, and I mentioned a few, but Shannon Briggs is up there, and exactly the same reason. I expected him to be a pain in the backside, and I expected to be, by the end of the night and day that I'd spent with him, I thought I'd be sick of "Let's go, champ." But when you actually listen to him talk about it and where that saying comes from, because it was a battle with his mental health, I just felt, wow, he changed me. He changed my opinion. Lovely guy. I didn't dislike him. I just didn't rate him. And but as a person, what a lovely guy. And I once we get back to some kind of normality, if I have an opportunity to bring Shannon Briggs back to the Northeast, I certainly will.
Definitely. And were you saying "Let's go, champ" for about a week afterwards?
I was, yes. Mainly because of Natalie, who we work with. Yeah, she was
the lovely Natalie. She still says it now, I think.
She does, yeah. She's obsessed. Fungo Freddy says, if Coral's got involved or some other bookies, do you think this will become more legit and more accepted and probably even televised?
Yes, the honest answer, and it's something that hopefully will come in the not too distant future. Yeah. A lot of people think of it with bare knuckle that it's all kinds of dodgy gangsters and shady bookies in the corner and stuff, and we work very hard to make it not like that. Apart from the gloves, you'd be lucky to tell the difference between a pro show and a bare knuckle show, and getting the rest of these things on. Natalie definitely is to blame. Getting the rest of the things in place, things like legal betting. I think it will be huge for the sport. If you work for Corals, by the way, Steve's got my number.
Yeah, aye, come and sponsor this show as well. Aye, but we've got some anyway. We've got some good sponsors, and normally because it's the true crime ones, I wouldn't normally do it. And this has been more sport than crime. So big shout out to Spider VPN for your internet security. They've been with us for the last 3 months, and are keeping on next month as well. Big shout out to arcotinteriors.com for your new kitchens. 0191 265 8663. Enquiries at arcot.org.uk. Also a big shout out to John at qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and the guys who produce our t-shirts. And a big shout out to Jab Signature as well. John at Jab got his first range coming out later this year. Keep an eye out for that. My boxers will be wearing it. If you want to subscribe to the channel, hit Newcastle Legends in the bottom corner there. That's it. You've subscribed. Hit the thumb up to like the video. Click share to share to your social media, and drop into the comments box. You've still got time to ask a question. And want to talk about your books again. Because of boxing, yeah, you're holding that one up. So let's talk about that one first. There it is.
Yeah,
Bare Knuckle Boxing's your latest one. The truth of the rise of bare knuckle boxing. So tell us a bit about that.
So it's split into 2 books. Got Genesis and Revelations, and that's as far as the religion part goes. And the first part of it is the history of the sport, and it's all about the legality of it, about how it was never illegal, but people tend to think it was. Talks about the Marquis of Queensberry, the going back to like the 1700s, the whole history of the sport. And then the second part is really starting off from when bare knuckle started again in this country. It's kind of 10 years ago, with the likes of Andy Topcliffe, when he started having them in hay bales, and how it grew, and when the likes of McCrory and Radford were fighting, and how it sort of grew into the huge sport that it is now. As I mentioned before, there has been over the years some kind of ropey people trying to get in and make money out of the sport. There's quite a few funny stories in there that go with it as well, especially one that happened in Mansfield. But definitely worth a look.
Good stuff. And you got another book out. I've noticed this one as well, which is a few years old now. But this was your first attempt at a novel, if I'm right, am I?
Yeah, that was the first attempt at a novel. And even if it didn't sell one single copy, I absolutely loved writing that book. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And it didn't end up with the original kind of plot line. I kept sort of adding things to it. There's a brilliant twist in the end. But I remember sitting writing it, and I was so into it. It was like watching the best movie you've ever seen on TV. And my kids saying, I was sitting typing, "Whoa, Dad, you look very intense for I'm in the moment," sort of thing. But I was lucky with that one. Glenn McCrory, he wrote a foreword for us for the book, which I was really sort of proud of. A name like Glenn, former cruiserweight world champion, it was a lovely thing for him to do when I spoke to him. And it's really actually good, quite inspiring what he wrote about boxing. So it kind of charts the life of someone whose father was murdered, an unlicensed fighter in the Northeast, and how he sort of grows into the fighter, grows into a man, gets married, has his kids, boxing along the way, and then at a certain point, he ends up in the ring with the person that murdered his dad. And it kind of carried on from there. But I really enjoyed, more than any of that book, I thoroughly enjoyed writing that.
I mean, obviously, wide range of books. I've stuck the link in the description. This one was interesting as well. Alexa for Kids. What's that about?
So I'm really badly obsessed with Alexa. Really badly. There's Alexa. So I must have 5 or 6 in the house. I've got them embedded in the ceiling. They control all my lights, TVs. When you should be able to hear this. Alexa, what's the temperature in the greenhouse?
The greenhouse temperature is 11.9 degrees.
I'm not sure if you heard that or not.
Yeah, I did, 11.9 degrees.
That's the temperature in my greenhouse at the minute. So I've just become a bit obsessed with them. And there's so much stuff you can do that you kind of don't think of. So I've done a couple of books on those, but I'm really bad for them, to be honest. I think I've got a problem.
It's not about, listen, anything that sells is well worth giving it a go, mate. And I would imagine that book's done quite well.
It's done pretty good, but it hasn't been enough to pay for all the Alexas I bought. I've even got one in the car.
Oh, that's fantastic. Brilliant stuff. We'll have to we could do a whole show on that, mate, I bet. Maybe in the future. You turned your hand, obviously, to presenting, doing the BKB and coming along and filming events, which is, what you've done for us in the past as well, which has been, as I say, gratefully received from you at times. And you ended up getting your own radio show. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. So it was not something I expected. I was asked by Paul Green, who was then a friend of mine, a presenter on Radio Northumberland, to go in and do a show talking about my book. And when I brought the first Diaries of a Doorman book out, it got on really well. And I went back and did another interview with something else and said, we're looking for presenters. And before I knew it, I had a combat sports show, didn't have a clue what I was doing. And the first person I had as a guest on the show was Ken Shamrock. To talk about the baptism of fire. Did some great shows with all kinds of people. I think you were on there at one point, all going absolutely fantastic. And then up popped the pop-up pirate and kind of ruined it. And by that I mean Paddy Conroy. That's the fella.
Yeah, I mean, what was his complaint? What was the problem?
So I did an interview with Stephen Sayers when his first book came out. And now this is the thing that really gets me. Paddy wasn't mentioned in one single sentence in that. Or in the letters he sent of complaint into the radio station. You've seen nothing like it.
There's an example of one. Hi, my name is Paddy Conroy. I was subject to being made part of some false events broadcasted in one of your radio shows by your employee, Stu Armstrong. I suggest that your radio station stops doing this, making up stories against Piopal in order to attract more viewers. Or, for whatever reason this was done, then maybe the local people who use our presently hoodwinking may trust your station for correct reporting. I myself am in touch with Ofcom as we speak over this matter. I would like you to dismiss this man from his job over this matter with immediate effect.
The funny thing was, it was a community radio station, so I was a volunteer anyway. Because it was an internet station, it wasn't covered under the rules of Ofcom either. Mm-hmm. However, it went on and on and on. And I was very disappointed in the radio station management, to be honest. And for want of a better phrase, I think their arse fell out. One in particular, and they were trying to pander into them, and they decided they weren't going to put the shows on the station for a while. And the thing that really upset me, I did a live broadcast show, and it was meant to go out for St. Oswald Hospice when I was trying to raise some funds for them. And because of all these complaints from Paddy, that show didn't go out. And I was more than anything, I was disappointed at that. But the whole thing about it is, Paddy wasn't mentioned. There was no mention of him whatsoever on. I mean, I think you were there when I recorded the interview.
Yeah, I was with Stephen. Yeah,
and I think the whole thing he seemed to take a problem with was at some point I laughed at something and Stephen laughed at something, but nobody mentioned him. Nobody even said Purple Pirate. Never mentioned anything else. So it was just absolutely nuts, to be honest. And then his latest little rant, I don't know if you've seen that. It's keeping his 300 subscribers happy on YouTube. Yeah.
It's a strange affair. I mean, I've had history, as people know. I mean, I wrote the book about Stephen Sayers, which, I'm very proud of, tried and tested at the highest level. We went on to do a fictional book with Dave McCaffrey, which Stephen was proud of. And then I've done Operation Sayers, which came out during lockdown. So, the documentary, tried and tested at the highest level, is available on Amazon. I've stuck a clip up, which goes live at 9 o'clock tonight. Just a little clip from that, really, because I think, I have seen the stuff which has been levelled, towards yourself, towards me, and I suppose I've got stuff here which I can show you. I mean, my relationship with Paddy used to be like that. I went up to see him in, at his allotment, which he called his warshed many years ago with a good friend of mine, Neil Jackson. We went up there to film for a documentary about the craze. He was a bit, he was friendly. He was welcoming. We sat down, we chatted, we talked about things prior to going on camera, because it was literally going to be about the craze. And he started going on about the Sayers family. He started moving cups around on the table and just stuff which I didn't understand, and more or less saying that, the Sayers were, his dreaded enemy. I didn't understand it. It was ramblings. It didn't make sense. None of it made sense to me. And as I say, I wasn't there to interview him about the Sayers family. I was there to interview him about the Cray twins and the Crays coming to Newcastle. He said he had a photograph of them, which we wouldn't have seen, and he would get a hold of it. We turned up. He didn't have the photograph. But ultimately, we had a bit of banter, and he took the mick. I mean, it was light-hearted. He came out with something about, Ronnie Cray. Did I sit on Ronnie Cray's knee? And it's not the first time somebody has said, did Ronnie Cray, touch you up, or did he do this? And I just laughed at it. I took it in the spirit it was meant. It was humour. Subsequently, he's gone, and he uses this on a regular basis. I'll try and find the clip. I've got one somewhere. No, it's not that one. It might be this one. I'll find it. But I've got one up here, which essentially he just says, Steve Wraith, when he came to see me at the allotment, I made some comment about him sitting on Ronnie Cray's knee, and he went red and he got embarrassed, and I didn't get red or embarrassed. I wasn't bothered about it at all. We were having a laugh. It was a joke, But I once asked him there on camera what his dad were doing, letting him write and visit two well-known pedo puffs in prison. He went red and refused to answer, and has hated me ever since. I asked him the next question, which he refused to answer also, and that was, did Ronnie ever sit you on his knee when you visited them? Now, that was on his Facebook profile, wide open to the general public, and, those profiles are no longer there, but he put that up on his Facebook page. Now, that really is defamation of character towards me, suggesting...
Well, I think he's a bit obsessed with you now, as well as the Sayers family.
Well, yeah, but I mean...
That wants you, or he wants to be you.
That really I found weird. But that to go from interviewing him and having a chat with him to then going to that, I found really, really bizarre. Once he found out I was doing the book with Stephen, though, things did escalate. And obviously he wasn't happy about it, and I understand that he wasn't happy about it. But I had chosen to write that book because I wanted to write it, and he didn't want that book coming out, despite, going to the media, going on to television, doing McIntyre, talking relentlessly about the Sayers when they were all incarcerated. And I mean, this kind of thing was appearing in the paper all the time. Pliers, Torturers TV confession. Gangland Hardman features in new documentary. There's the infamous photograph of him in his vest. Do you know what I mean? People remember watching it. He was making a curry, talking to people from his Chinese restaurant, saying they were from the Triads. And, that particular documentary was broadcast to millions of people. It came out on a DVD, and he's sitting smoking weed in his kitchen, but he's talking about the Sayers family, calling them this, calling them that, without particularly any evidence whatsoever. Now, I'm really surprised that Channel 4 or whoever it was, Channel 5, whatever, I can't exactly remember which channel it was went out on, but it was one of those two. And there was no like stopping that. Now, nowadays that would have probably been pulled because there wasn't a leg to stand on. Now, obviously, when I started doing the book, that's when, as I say, the ante upped for me, and I started getting threats via Facebook. And I'm not bothered, For me personally, Stu, you and I have talked about doing the door. Someone comes to me on the door and threatens me. I'm going to be concerned, aren't I? Because that's face to face and that's serious. People start inboxing you or tweeting you or whatever, then ultimately, I'm not really that concerned. People suddenly turn up, then you're going to be concerned. But this is an example, and there's my reply. Paddy obviously disconnected his Facebook, 25th of the 11th, 2011. I ain't went public about nothing other than me and you going to have a fight, okay? And that's for trying to set me up again, okay? See you about it whenever you want to come and see me about it. But until then, we will have to wait. But I ain't having this bollocks out of you again, okay? And I'm going to make sure that it stops when I see you. Passive aggressive. I said, I never tried to set you up, Paddy. Sorry you feel like that. Now, what did I try and set him up about, Stu? Well, this is where you come in. And this is what we're going to discuss tonight on the show.
Well, it's all my fault.
Well, yeah, because ultimately, Stephen, as people will see on the clip that goes up tonight and is available on Tried and Tested at the Highest Level documentary on Amazon Prime, which you can download anytime for £3.49. Stephen challenged Paddy Conroy to a fight, and this hit the media. This was in the Chronicle. He challenged him to a fight for charity, and he asked you to get involved. He asked another good friend of his, Rama, to get involved. And he also asked David Fraser, the son of Mad Frankie Fraser, to act as referee. Stephen was even happy to go to London to fight. And at the time, me personally, I couldn't promote it because I'd gone into the pro game. But you were the man asked to do this job. So what happened?
Well, so I spoke to him. Really conveyed the message that Stephen would like to have a fight, settle things once and for all, but do it where nobody gets nicked, do it in a ring, and if they're going to do it, make some money for a good cause, make some money for a charity while they're on. And then I feel really stupid saying this, and this is God's honest truth. The answer he gave is just nuts. So he started rambling on, first of all, there was all these, and there was 10 of them got us on Westgate Hill years ago, and then it was 20, and then it was 30, and then it was, no, I'm not going to fight in a ring. And he's saying all this about having pillars on his hand and gloves and stuff like that. I can't honestly remember, but I would imagine that I wouldn't have said gloves. I would imagine I would have said bare knuckle, because, that's what I'm involved in. But anyway, he then turned around and said, can't be doing that, I'll go to jail for life. Maybe we should go to the woods with nobody else and no cameras. And then he kind of went, and this is the weird bit, but I can't because I'll be having me tea. You'll be having your tea. When, yeah, well, I'll maybe think about it after I've had my tea. And that's the thing, when he goes on all these rants, and he was giving it all this with my name the other night, you start and say something, and then it just doesn't make sense. And whether he's still smoking the green, and whether he's smoking it too much, I don't know. But he's very hard to actually understand. But this whole thing about what was it? Oh yeah. So I told Stu Armstrong I'd give him a street fight. Didn't mate. He said he was busy having your tea, and then he came up with and Stephen was shitting himself. Stephen wasn't shitting himself. I remember telling him, we're walking through beside Revolution, going to your office, funny enough, and I was talking to Stephen, and I told him then, and he kind of looked at us like, are you stupid? When I said what he said about having his tea, there was no fear of that man at all, I can tell you that. And it was me that told him. And this whole rant is just ridiculous. But when he got 300 subscribers on YouTube, Steve, you've got to keep them happy.
It's bizarre. It's bizarre. As I say, for me,
he's a man obsessed.
Yeah, he is. And just to address a couple of the things which have been mentioned, I mean, from my perspective, the stuff that's come out in recent days, I've noticed a couple of the videos have disappeared. There's a couple still up there. But, just to clarify, from my perspective, I'm an author. I'm somebody who's a promoter. I'm somebody who's an author. I'm somebody who's an actor. I do various things. And now I present a podcast. I don't work for MFI or MI5. Never have worked for either of those people.
Have you had a lie detector test?
Well, funny you should say that. I've been told I should have one by him on this rant. Yeah, I mean, look, we know he's had a few himself. First crime book in British history to be backed by lie detector tests, releasing in February 2016. That book never came out, needless to say. And that's because the person who we got to do the book, another author, once he started picking up the manuscript, realised that this book essentially wasn't going to be full of facts. And that essentially was why that book was then turned into another book. I'm not going to name it. I'm not going to promote it. But it's another book which came out full of his stories. And
is it the one with the blue cover by any chance?
It is, yeah. That basically should have been his book. So what happened there was the author's just taken those stories and brought the book out anyway. And that's, not our fault, not my fault. The story as well as in that book, there's no facts in there about anything other than, stuff which has come out of his mouth, which he deems as legal, which isn't, you know what I mean? There's stuff in there which is just fabricated. And that in itself made Stephen want to do his book. And that was good for me because I wanted to do the Sayers book. They didn't want to do it. But then, when someone puts a book out like that, there has to be a response. And that's what it was. And I think, there's, reference the other night about when the Sayers' dad was shot in the face, that, there was police there with him who were attacked. Utter rubbish. His dad was in the car on his own. It was covered in the newspapers. He drove to the hospital. The hospital staff are there with statements to say that he drove to the hospital on his own, despite being shot in the face. So that story is cleared up. He also made references, of course, to the Hunt situation, which has been referenced, of course, in the tried and tested book written by Stephen. That in the book contains the letter from Stephen Richards, another renowned Northeast author, who confirms that the accusations of the Sayers family being police informers is completely fabricated. So that is also relevant in documentaries that I've seen, in documents that I've seen as well. So
called anybody an informer because it's not that long ago. I remember sitting in the public gallery with somebody who'd just been grassed up by him.
Yeah, I mean that whole situation developed very, very quickly. And what we need to remember is that when you start putting stuff up like this, calling me Ronnie Cray's schoolboy bum chum, it starts. That is how people will react to that. Now, I'm not the kind of person who reacts to that. I've screenshotted it. I've kept it. I can use it tonight. That's my that is my reaction to that. I think when you start putting some stuff up like that. Now, I'm not going to read that, but I will leave it on the screen for people to read. But that's Paddy on his own public profile, having a chat and talking about something that he's downloaded on the computer. Now, that isn't me saying that. That is him. That is him claiming that. Now, there was a reaction to that. I'm not going to go into it because it's been in the court of law. It's easily findable on the internet. But essentially, that played out in court. And the reason that particular statement played out in court is because Stephen reacted to it with a tweet himself. That tweet went out to a lot of people, and a lot of people read it, a lot of people commented on it, and a lot of people shared it. And that, because that was somebody giving Paddy something back on social media, he clearly didn't like it. So what did he do? He rang the police. And when he rang the police, he got the police to his house, and the police then took a statement. And the statement, which again is replicated in Operation Sayers, which is available in all good bookshops and some bad ones as well, is there for all to see. A 5-page statement with Paddy's name on and Paddy's signature on. It's as simple as that. There you are at the bottom. Paddy's signature. That is his 5-page statement. And in that 5-page statement, he complains against Stephen for putting up his message on Facebook. And what happened then? Well, Stephen got arrested. And as you say, you ended up in the public gallery. The only other person to be in the public gallery supporting Paddy was his longtime friend Bullock there. Why Paddy would post that photo of Bullock on his social media, I really don't know. But again, another comment there about Bull bringing a book out, which we're still waiting for. It's not come out. But yeah, ultimately, we all ended up in court. We went along, and again, this day in court is captured on film. Thanks to Media Arts for doing that. And that is also on the clip that comes out at 9:00 tonight. But again, that's available on the full documentary, which you can buy on Amazon Prime. So yeah, there's been all of that. Now, I've got to be honest, I sat back for a while and I thought, how did we actually come to this? Stephen pleaded guilty. Paddy didn't get his day in court against Stephen. He was there but couldn't go into the dock because Stephen pleaded guilty. Stephen gets a fine.
Didn't he hide in the witness room or something? It wouldn't come on.
Yeah, he wasn't allowed. By all accounts, he was there, but he wasn't allowed to come out and essentially do anything because Stephen had pleaded guilty. We came out of the court, and again, this is on the clip that goes on this channel at 9:00, which you'll be able to watch. But my mind started ticking over as to who or why did this happen? Why would anybody who had been stirring things up? And I've got to be honest, and this will be interesting. This will be interesting to Conroy watching, to be perfectly honest, because I stumbled across some inboxes, and the inboxes I found were basically to a female friend of mine. And yeah, this one, this is the one. So this is a female friend of mine who was inboxing this person who used to be involved with Conroy, and you can see there, he said he'd been arrested and was on bail when he passed the lie detector test. He said his son must have downloaded the stuff. Now that's interesting. Now that's not me. That's not Stephen. But that's interesting to see that. I've blacked out the names. I don't want anybody knowing who these people are. But that's interesting, and that was sent to me, and I've deleted it now. It's on there for people to see. But that was interesting. I felt it looks as if somebody somewhere has been played. You know what I mean? I'll leave that for him to decide. But that in itself told me a lot about the whole situation. Unfortunately, his response is always going to be the same to me. He's always going to be having a pop. He's always going to be looking at my social media. He did it again years ago on Facebook. I went to see Phil Berryman. Why did I go to see Phil Berryman? Well, Phil Berryman wrote a great book called the Wacky Backy Boat.
You read that? Phil's a cracking bloke,
and that's still available on Amazon. But that particular book, I went to see him about publishing a hard copy, and at the time our company was really interested in publishing the hard copy of that book. And yeah, he then jumps on it and says, "And what may we ask is going on here? Definitely not a meeting between them, all to take any lie detector tests. That's for sure." That again, I mean, bizarre, really. I went down to speak to him and talk to him about publishing his book. I don't work for MI5. I don't do. But yeah, it is bizarre, mate. It is bizarre. I don't understand it. It's
if you're going to have a meeting with somebody, what the hell's it got to do with him anyway?
Yeah, it is strange. Ultimately, it's still going on today. It's still going on as it is. Even recently on YouTube, I got that. Bulls just informed me what you have done with this latest Sears Cockerel video. Not even sure what he's talking about, Steve. I'm just going to find out where I can catch you. Work, home, socialising, etc. And I'm going to come and see you personally over at this time round, okay? See you soon, lad.
Well, that's blatantly a threat.
Yeah, it is. But look,
the same thing. He was giving it all the mouth about me and Brian Cockrell. And well, I haven't even done it. I'm doing the filming with Brian next week.
Bizarre.
Yet, so
well, I did reply. I just said, inbox me your phone number, please, Patrick. It's good to talk. I'd hate to see you fined for making an unnecessary trip from your caravan to Tyneside during these tight COVID restrictions. P.S. There is no work or socialising. There's a pandemic. You're not welcome at my home, so please don't dream of turning up on my doorstep. Many thanks and stay safe. That was me reply. So look, from my perspective, it's still ongoing. I think I had a right to reply after those fairly libelous and defamatory comments that were placed on his YouTube channel over the last 6 days. And I hope that clears it up. And I hope it clears it up for him as well, because ultimately, if he thinks that we're working for MI5, then he's deluded. And I know I know he probably is. And I think you should maybe read the Chronicle because there wasn't a war, but the Chronicle loved it, didn't it? The war is over. Stephen says he wants it to finally end. It's crazy. It shouldn't be going on. And all he keeps banging on about is taking lie detector tests. With various people. So it is clueless. And
I haven't been asked for a lie detector test.
You were told bide your time, Bonnie lad. You will get asked.
This whole thing with when I tried to set the fight up for Stephen between the two of them, it's that what he said. It's just so unreal. I kind of felt a bit sorry for him, to be honest, because it's not a thing a rational person would say. And I probably would have never have sort of went public and told people what he'd actually said until he started mouthing off about us the other night. So, and the other thing, this whole thing, if I was a grass, I wouldn't be going on, putting myself in the public light. I'd be scuttling away hiding. And this is not me throwing accusations. It's proven. We've seen the statement. And just as well, he kind of grasped me to the radio station was something I hadn't even done. But it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. And, to be honest as well, just going back to those inboxes between the man and the woman whose name I blanked out. I've blanked the name out again here. But this was a message on that person's Facebook page. For some time, I have ignored the drug-fueled ramblings of Paddy Conroy, a man once respected who now resembles an overweight mug who can no longer suckle on his sister's comfort titty. This is this guy, a couple of years ago. I'm no longer a villain. I write books and make TV programmes. When I interviewed Paddy for the book Fog on the Time, he called Berryman a grass, etc. And I wrote it word for word. That is Paddy's opinion, not mine. Berryman was not happy with it and told me so when I met him. Berryman then told his story and Conroy isn't happy with it. So who is a grass and who is out of order? Simple rule, if you don't want to be criticised, don't bitch about the other people via the media. Phil Berryman claimed in his trial that Conroy forced him to import drugs. The jury believed him. That's a fact. So why is he a liar? On a personal note, Conroy, you have my number. Forget your divvy followers. Meet me for a straightener and I will punch you up and down the street, you deluded mug. I'm sick of your big paranoid mouth now. And the rest of it's self-explanatory. But that again, there's somebody else. That isn't Stephen. That's somebody else. Another author. Again, I'm not going to name him, but that is somebody else who essentially, challenged him to a fight, and he decided not to bother. For me, it's quite clear what's happened here. I think he's been played, and he needs to be looking at somebody else other than you and me for what's actually happened here. Do you know what I mean? And I just think he needs to move on. And again, police informants is another big thing of his. Davy Glover, we've got an interview on this channel which has had 128,000 views with Davy Glover. The reason that video was edited, and I know a lot of people say it's edited a lot. Well, it is because, as you can see, Davy is not a well person. He's not a well man. I asked him the questions which I felt would give the best, which he would give the best answers to, and we got what we could out of him. It's not an hour interview. Davy Glover wasn't capable of doing a 1 hour interview. We were very lucky to get him on camera and very lucky to meet him in that respect. He gave his opinion. He claims, as he will hear on there, that he was under duress when he gave the statement, which, we keep seeing brought up. And essentially, Davy, I found him to be a lovely guy, face to face, just somebody who has lived a life and is suffering for it. But yeah, like he says, if he'd been a police informant, would he have got 10 years? And, this implying, Stu, that, people are police informers. Well, my understanding of police informers is that they get time knocked off or don't go to jail at all. Whereas the people that Paddy's accusing of being police informers, they've all been to prison and served ridiculous sentences. And in fact, if you speak to any of
ridiculous remands as well,
if you speak to the Sayers family or you read the Sayers books, you will understand that they've always been given higher tariffs and they've all been in category A's. It's crazy, isn't it, to think that, you're accusing somebody of being a police informer and that they're going to get that kind of time.
it's just nuts. It's just, like I said before, I think the whole thing is where, to me, he should be ashamed himself of being a grass, not throwing it, and that's not me sort of throwing accusations out there. That's a fact.
He's made a statement. He did get Stephen nicked. I mean, look, I think we need to remind people as well that you and I aren't gangsters. We're not criminals. Do you know what I mean? You've written books. You've done the door. I've written books. I've done the door. I've played villains in films, but we're not gangsters. We're not criminals, and we don't work for families. I mean, again, he's leveling at me, saying that I drink with the Sayers every weekend. Well, I'd have a job for starters. There's been a pandemic on for 12 months, and none of us have been able to go out and drink. But I don't go and drink with the Sayers family. John is teetotal for starters, but I don't go out and drink with these people. I don't go out and drink full stop. It's not something I do. I'm too busy working. I'm too busy doing events. So again, another false accusation leveled at me, which, it's defamation. It's something which I just felt tonight. And, I asked you before you came on, would you be up for doing it? And I'm pleased you said yes. But it defames our character, and it's wrong. Do you know what I mean? That somebody should be allowed to go onto any network and defame our character and have a pop at us. And again, you're saying about Grasson, but he wrote to the radio station and had a pop at you.
Well, in my mind, that's Grasson in exactly the same way. I'm just amazed that he's got the audacity not to hide himself away and be ashamed of himself. But I sometimes think that when you read some of his stuff, he rambles with it. I think maybe he needs some help.
Yeah, look, as I said right at the top of this whole discussion, for me, when I met him and we did the documentary about the craze, I quite liked the guy. That wasn't the first meeting I had. I actually went to that author's wedding. I was invited to the wedding, and Paddy was on the top table. And he'll remember this. He was on the top table, and he essentially spent about 20 minutes chucking peanuts from the top table onto trying to hit me. But eventually we spoke briefly at the wedding, and that was it. And I think as well, I spent 18 years on the door in Newcastle. I got to know the Sayers, but I got to know the Tams. I got to know the Conroys. I got to know the Harrisons. I got to know the people from the coast, the Hunters. I got to know anyone and everyone who you needed to know to do the door properly. Because if you had an issue with people, or with people in their company, or people coming, trying to get in, dropping their name, whatever kind of problem you had, people as doormen had to have connections with those kind of people. I don't care who you are working, wherever you are, but that is street knowledge and knowing those situations and knowing those people. And for me, I got on really well with the Conroys as well, and I know the Sayers did, which is why the book that was made, which, that author did, it's a fabrication, because it creates this impression there was a huge gang war on Tyneside, and there never was. There was never a gang war.
I was waiting for him to turn like the next page, and they were riding horses up the main street, and they went down to the OK Corral at the big market and pulled the 6-shooters out. It's just absolute crap.
Yeah, I mean, it's bizarre. And there was also, I've seen as well, a couple of people have said about this story that's in the Paul Massey book. It did happen. The situation that I did, mention in the Paul Massey book and mention in my book, Every Boy's Dream, it did happen, on that particular night, they came into the bar, Paul Massey and Paddy Conroy came into the bar that night, and it was Tiger. I was working on the door, and yes, he's right about who was coming looking for him, and there was a good squad of them, and I didn't want trouble. I didn't want trouble at the bar. That's my job as a doorman, to stop bother. That story's correct. I stand by it. I don't need to do a lie detector for it. It's a fact. I can get the other doorman who was working there that night. We certainly didn't have body cams back in those days. I mean, it's 2010 since I wrapped in the doors, but we didn't have body cams and stuff, which he claimed. But yeah, bizarre. It's bizarre. It's a bizarre stage, of everybody's lives, I suppose. But yeah, I've seen in the chat people asking where they can buy the books. Operation Sayers is out now. You can buy that on Amazon, or you can buy it in the back page or WH Smith's in Newcastle. and Tried and Tested, which is the first book. So I would advise people to buy the first book if you haven't read that. That is written by Stephen, me as well. Great, both good books, both informative, but both different. Both very different. That one is from Stephen's words. Stephen telling the story of how he grew up in Elsick and the upbringing, and how he became a criminal, and how he turned his life around as well. But there's a lot to cram into that one. But it's a great read, very funny at times.
It's a very honest book as well. I think it's really good.
Yeah. Operation Sears is a bit different. Touches on a couple of the things, but it's from my perspective. I wrote it with the blessing of the family, and thoroughly enjoyed writing that. I wrote that over lockdown, and that I think people will enjoy that. So buy them both. You can get them both on Amazon, or you can go to www.badboysbooks.net. This is available on Amazon Prime. On Amazon. Just get on there. It's a downloadable documentary. It's £3.49. If you want a little teaser, the little teaser is going up on my channel at 9 o'clock tonight. And I think you'll enjoy it. It's about an hour and a half long. Again, it's Stephen being very honest and very frank about his life and times, and well worth a watch. And people asking about the film. Yes, it's happening. The script is finished. We're just looking now to basically finish that off. We've got to do a budget for it, and then after we've done the budget, we will then set about trying to film it. It needs to be cast and filmed. So it should be.
Don't forget when you're casting. Stephen said I can have a part.
Don't worry, son. We'll get you. We'll get you in. I'm sure.
I'm not playing this person though.
No, you can't play him. www.badboysbooks.net is my website if you want to buy some books. All kinds of books on there. Signed copies available as well. And Funko Freddy says, I think I've heard some of it on Atwood's, both books. That is sounded canny. Who is the best? What's the best book to start with out of all of this? Definitely get Tried and Tested, mate. What about MIF, says Funko. Yeah. I just hope we've cleared it up. It's just, when you see stuff coming out like that, it needs to be addressed. Like I've always said, an unanswered lie becomes a truth. So you sometimes need to rectify these things. And I hope I've backed it up with some relative screenshots there and made a few people think, including them, about who potentially is behind all of this. Simon Newton says, I tell Warlass not to shout at Alexa. She hates how much I love her. Classic. Okay, so anything coming up, Stu, before we finish? Well, I know we've gone into extra time to get you on, mate, but I appreciate your input. Anything else you want to promote? Anything you want to get on? Where can people find you?
So I'm on Facebook under my own name, and to follow the bare knuckle, www.ubkb.uk. And as I mentioned, the show in July is almost sold out, but 5th of December in Manchester, and it's going to be an absolute cracker. Some absolutely phenomenal fights going to be on that. So you can get tickets from the website, through social media, or from myself direct with that. But make sure you buy one of these first and have a good read about it.
Stu, I knew it would be a good interview, mate. Been an absolute pleasure having you on, mate. I'm sure we'll get you back on again a little bit closer to the time, maybe for one of the... giving us the opportunity to kind of put the record straight about this whole thing, that these 300 subscribers will be thinking the wrong thing, won't they? You take care, mate. Love to the family.
Steve.
Bye-bye, mate.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.